Hi, thank you for allowing me to come here and speak again at this particular festival. It's always great to come and share experiences. And I hope at the end that we can answer some questions and have a bit of a conversation, albeit online, about what's happening locally and how we can really spread the continuity of care. So my name's Caitlin Wilson. I'm a consultant midwife at Worcestershire Acute Hospitals NHS Trust, and I work there 50% of my time, and my other 50% of my time is acting as consultant midwife at the University of Worcester. And in both of my roles, I lead on midwifery projects, but I also am embedding continuity of care. So I'll speak a little bit about that as the presentation goes forward. So this is our continuity of care. I'm trying to get all of the teams, and Team Opal, if you're out there, my apologies. I could not find a photograph of you that was a representative of your team. So do forward one shortly. But this is just a quick snapshot of some of our continuity of care teams. And as you can see, a couple of them have been taken during the COVID pandemic of the last 14 months. So our teams, these are just to show you what all their names are. It's always nice to have a little visual about who they are and what they're looking at. So we've got 6 teams currently in operation, and our last team, which is Team Amethyst, the purple team here, just went live and starting their own calls this week. And they're busy and quite active and looking forward to getting themselves embedded. Our 2 oldest teams, which are Team Sapphire and Team Ruby, will be celebrating their second birthday in a couple of days' time, actually. Team Emerald and Team Pearl have been operational for about 7 months now, and Team Opal have celebrated their first birthday last month. And so we have been phasing these teams out for a period of just over 2 years now, because both Sapphire and Ruby had a bit of a lag time getting into their program. So these are just our emblems. These are the teams themselves designed these, and each in time the teams come out, they name themselves. Obviously, you could see that there's a particular theme going on. But the teams are free to name themselves, but have all chosen to continue down the obviously the precious stone route, and of course the had a vote of the emblem that they all wear, and they wear it on their uniforms as well. They all carry their have their own polo t-shirts, so they use those in the community. So just to give you a little bit about our teams, I'm sure that this has been information that's been relayed before, but it's always worth going over it again. We have got a 1 to 35 ratio, and the reason why we've chosen 1 to 35 rather than a 1 to 36, which I'm sure will come up in the question, is actually we have targeted quite intensive areas. So we've looked at our super lower output areas with the council, and those are the areas that we are heading into to have our teams operational. We're also one of the most rural counties in the country with the least dense population. So just to caveat that a little bit. So there is quite a bit of travelling that is involved, and obviously our unit is quite central with some periphery units around. So that's why we have reduced it to a 1 to 35 ratio, just capturing a bit of that variance that may be out there. But we're constantly looking at this, and so if it doesn't feel like the right ratio, that will either increase to 1 to 36 or decrease as needed. And we use the Butt model, which is probably becoming more and more familiar as continuity is rolled out across the country. This is a model that came out of the Netherlands, just as a bit of background, and we adopted it right from the beginning. So this is a model that we have been trying to embed, and that's where the teams actually manage themselves. They do all have identified team leaders, but that team leader isn't necessarily part of that active team. And I can explain a little bit more about that. So actually one individual oversees a group of teams and actually has a very hands-off approach. So whilst there are things within the NHS that need to be completed, such as equipment ordering, maintenance, sickness and absence returns, signing off study leave, that type of thing, that is basically what the team leader is there for. Or if the teams themselves have an issue that they cannot resolve, then they go to the team leader. But actually the day-to-day operations is entirely led by the teams themselves. So they sort out their rosters, their off-duty, their study leave, any additional training courses that they need to go on, obviously with filling out the proper paperwork. And they do all of that themselves. And so they organize themselves completely, and they're autonomous to manage themselves and manage their diaries. So our teams are on average 8, and I know NHS England is looking at 4 to 8. However, we've chosen to go on the upper side of that, again, because we have a significant number of part-time workers. And in order to cover the team with 6 or more full-time equivalencies, it was the right thing to do. And it also reduces the number of on calls or availabilities, as the teams are calling them, that the teams have to do that. So every woman of the 1 to 35 ratio for one whole time equivalency has a named midwife who was then backed up by a buddy midwife. So those two would work together, trying not to be off at the same time, and trying to see each other's women as much as possible and families as much as possible. And of course, if they're both up and out or having to sleep or on annual leave and someone's sleeping, of course, that is then delegated to the rest of the team or rearranged as necessary. And so we've chosen to be geographically based, which means we're mixed risk caseloads. It's not for low risk women. This is for all risk women. We've had twins, type 1 diabetes, all sorts of issues which need a little bit more intensive consultant input. And so, of course, we have taken all of those women onto these teams as well. So it isn't a selection for low risk, and that needs to be emphasised, that actually, like many of the teams all over the country, we have gone with a geographically based. So any woman in a designated postcode or family would fall into the continuity of care teams, and so that's how we've chosen to organise themselves. So we really encourage flexible working, and flexible in the sense of midwives are free to work and work with themselves, and that's going back to the Budsworth model, and arrange their diary and their family lives as they're able to do so, but working together as a team to make sure that the 24/7 is covered. And as I said, we're working on an availability system, so or formerly known as on call, but the midwives prefer to call it available, so that they are available for emergency care outside of hours for their named women. We've welcomed newly qualified midwives into all of our teams, and that is, we have had some straight from graduation who have chosen to go into those models, and we've had others who have come out at various points within their first year of preceptorship. And actually, the teams themselves, those who initially started it up to 2 years ago, who have completed their preceptorship in continuity of care, have written a really good article about it for the Practicing Midwife Journal, about their experiences of being newly qualified midwives. And we're actually doing an evaluation of this with the university to look at how newly qualified feel about working continuity of care models. And again, that's just to really embed this as more and more come out of their training and education, looking into domain 2 of the NMC standards, particularly, that more and more students are going to be prepared and ready to work in this model. So it's nice to see how that transition might happen. And of course, we've developed a bespoke program for newly qualified midwives. And when I say bespoke, it means that some will prefer to spend some time in the unit, others may choose not to do that. And it really is based around the needs and the learning needs of our newly qualified midwives. And over time, those needs may change and flex, and that's exactly what we needed. So as much as we wrap care around the women, we wrap the care around our midwives, and we wrap the care around our newly qualified midwives, centering their learning where they feel that they need it. And of course, when you start this continuity journey, you don't necessarily know where your gaps may be. And that's exactly why we've designed this program. We've done that with the education team and our fantastic preceptor midwife. And we have student midwives onto all of our teams. And we're now doing a big program at looking at how to fully integrate student midwives onto our continuity of care teams. And we'll be working with the teams themselves and our matrons and all the band 7s to see how this will work. So again, we started our journey back in 2017, actually, is when we first started engaging with our service users. And we decided that that would be the best place to start to see what the voices of the service users were. Now, we obviously had the Better Birth of 2016, which gave us a good indication. But we wanted to know locally exactly what our families and our mothers and birthing people were thinking. And so we went out and engaged with our Maternity Voices partnership, explaining exactly what continuity of care was going to look like. In a joint response, we did a survey together, and we went out across our LMNS and surveyed women, and we got about 10% response rate back. And of course, it did show exactly more or less what we were expecting it, and that reflected very much what the Better Births found, and that's most women felt that continuity of care would be something that they would enjoy. So it was a good place for us to start, really, engaging in that way. And we've continued to report with the Worcestershire and Herefordshire Maternity Voices partnership to really keep them updated and to get the feedback. And they're very, very engaged with us to see this project work, and that we ask the right questions and we do the right things to get this right for everybody right from the beginning. So we've done some co-production with our staff. I've got a number of pictures here. clearly these are all pre-COVID, but we have had another very, very large event. About 150 to 200 people attended that event, and that was a joint event across several of the different counties and the University of Worcester. And service users, again, were involved with this. But unfortunately, it doesn't take a very great picture to put up here to display to everyone, because it was all done on Teams, of course. But again, we have continued to have these engagement events, and we will continue to do so, because it is really important to hear what all staff groups have to say about continuity of care, and certainly address all the concerns and issues and pathways and everything that everybody wants to talk about with continuity, and certainly as things begin to move forward into the future. And so what have we learned? And of course, with 6 teams, we have done an awful lot of learning over the last couple of years. And I think it's really important to not only share the positives, but exactly what we have learned as well. And so what we have learned is lots. Very happy to share what we have learned. Engagement is a very key thing, not only with your service users, but with your whole staff group. We will be embedding, and we're going to be doing an embedding now with our whole service, across the whole service of maternity services, to give a chance for the whole place to really settle down into what this looks like. And that's particularly poignant, I think, as we're starting to come out of our lockdown, with staff returning and all the various things that are happening as this lockdown eases. And it's really to just allow everyone to really catch their breath. And I'm sure we've heard a lot about the reflection and the impact of COVID that we've probably not even seen yet. And I think it's worth us taking that deep breath and embedding what we've already got in place before we start to move anything else forward. And I think that will really be a chance for us to reevaluate the entire program. So we're going to look at enhancing our pathways across the system, because as more and more teams have rolled out, of course, there is no roadmap for this particularly, at least not the nitty gritties, which of course are always the things that catch you up. It's finding an induction of labour pathways, our backup system pathways, and from the feedback from all of the staff, this is really important for us to get right. Not only for the continuity midwives and the women that are being looked after, but of course for the entire service themselves, because you've got to get this right. It impacts everybody, and of course this it has to be a systems approach. So we also want to strengthen our multi-agency approach, and that is engaging more with our health visitor teams and our mental health services, inviting them to team meetings, and so that we start to go back to that approach that happened ages and ages and ages ago, where actually we're trying to get everybody into the same building. But if that can't happen for various different reasons, then of course we want that communication to be open and transparent. And so it's strengthening our bonds with those agencies that sit maybe external to our particular organization, but nonetheless have an impact on how care is delivered across the system. And having said that, all teams have had a named consultant since the beginning. But again, that is something that we are very keen to, and certainly in light of Ockenden and other reports, but certainly just from a communications and an experience point of view, is strengthen. And that's something that we're working on quite closely with our obstetrician body, is what that might look like. And I know there's examples throughout the country, which of course we're going to turn to for inspiration and learning ourselves, and how we make that look. As to be a really good experience. And a number of our teams have, well, all of our teams have excellent support from their consultant obstetricians. But of course, there's the integration of that and within team meetings, and that communication, and that way that we want things to work just needs to be bottomed out a little bit more, and so that everybody is approaching this from exactly the same point of view and experience for the women. So enhanced support across our system, and that's for all of our staff groups. So looking at how we support everyone as we start to come out of this COVID pandemic, and to learn to work in different ways. And that's something that we're quite keen to embed across the system. We're also looking at an evaluation of our student midwife experience, which I've already discussed. And we're hoping that our workshops and programs of communication will continue. We have appointed 2 fantastic midwives who, one of which spoke not that long ago at a different forum, talking about how we're going to embed that and what continuity of care means. And so we've got 2 leads who are going to be moving this project forward at pace, at floor level, And what I mean by that is that they're going to be doing lots of workshops, discussions, programs, and making sure that we get everything right for the system. So these are some of our outcomes from 2020. I don't have the latest outcomes, which represent more of our teams. And that's just simply because of the time of year. It's that time of year when everybody is asking for data and everybody's trying to get through their data. So this is just to give an outcome of what happened within the first few teams that went into operation. Having done just an initial assessment, there isn't much difference in these statistics, in the variations of these statistics. And what I mean by the gaps from continuity of care to the trust seem to be pretty much the same, and will probably be the same this year in the initial data collection. However, I can say that the home births across the system have increased. So we know that they're almost double both of those statistics. So some of the teams are reporting upwards of 20-25% home birth rate, and our whole organisation, like many others across the UK, have seen a rise in home births as the pandemic has been there, and so that's something that we're analysing as well. So it seems to be that number, and obviously some of the statistics around our birth centre have changed as well. So that's just a general overview of our continuity of care pathways and some of the differences that we noticed at a very high level. And of course, analysis is constantly going on for some of those micro outputs, and experience is always there. And all of our teams have very active Twitter and Facebook pages. And for any testimonials, it's worth moving onto their website pages, where families are sharing photographs, experiences, cards, and thank yous. And really the impact that the teams are having on that experience of women, not just the clinical outcomes, but the experiences is quite palpable. And so this is our video. I'm sure it has been seen up and down the country before. It's been shared on the safety network as well. However, for anybody who has not seen it, I'm more than happy to share it again if we've got time, and I'm looking towards to if we've got the time to do so. So I'm fingers crossed, everyone. We're going to give this a go.
Team is key to continuity. It isn't an individual person doing individual things. We do it as a team, a small team, a close team, but we have got colleagues. There is somebody else there. You feel like you're making a difference. You really feel like you can make a difference. I thought I would be worried about the on-calls, but I actually love the on-calls, because when somebody rings me at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's because they're going to have a baby. It's lovely.
For me, it was all about relationship building with the midwife and them getting to know you and your pregnancy and things like that. And if I was to have more children, I definitely want it to be with a continuity care team again, yeah. So, yeah.
Having someone that knows exactly what you're going through, who's been there from the beginning, it's like having a friend take you through your pregnancy.
It was amazing to get to the birthing centre, and she was there and she knew me, she knew my history, she knew, you know, all the things that I'd wanted as part of my birthing plan. Doesn't it? It makes you feel cared for, and you're not just walking into a system and walking out of a system and you're just another number.
She knows me, she knows my son, even my dog.
Yeah.
So,
and your mum.
And my mom, yes, exactly. So building this relationship is very important.
It's definitely given me more flexibility. I have more of a life-work balance. And for me, it just gives more meaning to my job. I'm really passionate about continuity of care, and I would highly recommend midwives to try it before they say no to it. It's an amazing way of working. We know all the benefits from research, but like hearing from women and getting feedback, it's just with having that trusting yourself in the birth and also in the team that are looking after you, and it just makes everything more relaxing.
Even you just like, come on, let's just ask Beck, and it was easy.
To have that birth plan and somebody who's on your side and supporting you 100% because they know exactly what you want, that's a really comforting and supporting thing. And
But you actually texted me yourself, didn't
I
you,
did
and
text
said,
you, yeah.
Becca, I need to speak to you, which was amazing, really, that you, because Sophie was asleep and you wanted to talk about how you felt a little bit and what was going on.
But it's just having that reassurance that you aren't alone in the process, and having that personal bond with somebody is a massive difference.
Yeah.
Understands you and what your needs are, and marry the two together. That really makes a big difference, I think, to parents
And just
and families. I mean, it's not just
Ilse still asks after
Yeah.
you. She does.
Yeah, she does.
She already knew me, she knew my case, she knew about different things that had cropped up, so that was really nice. I would definitely want that way again, having done all 3 ways. Just to have that continuity within a small group, within a patch, so everyone's sharing the same experience as well, and I think every mother should benefit from feeling that way. Not just because of who I had, but because of the continuity of care within the Sapphire team, and building that bond and trust element within a professional throughout the whole experience through pregnancy and birth.
You've got 2 midwives, or 1 midwife and someone who can back up. And the fact it was done as well in my own home, in my own environment, gave me the confidence to bring up my issues.
It made such a difference to us for the pregnancy, knowing the midwife all the time, and I also came to meet the midwife groups, so if my midwife wasn't there, I knew the other 4 midwives in my area. So she knew what we wanted. She knew we wanted the delayed cord clamping, all these sorts of things. So, I mean, she didn't have to really ask me anything because she knew everything. And that's great. You could just worry about delivering the baby then, can't you? They knew us, and you can't ask for much more than that. Just that it's great, and thank you to all of them. They were great. Really good. It gives me tears.
For me, I find it gives me much more job satisfaction. I'm much more happier in doing my job. I can give the women my time. They appreciate it. Before, I worked my life around my job. Now I work my job around life. I think that's really nice to know in your pregnancy that you can trust someone and that you can kind of, it's like a whole family situation. It's not just my baby, it's their brother or sister, and it's my husband's child, and it's nice that we're all involved.
100%, without a doubt. Without a doubt, if I was ever to have another one, it's the system I want to be on.
I'm just going to say thank you very much, and that kind of concludes everything. And any questions, I just had a thank you slide, but I'm not going to hold that back up because I think I've run out of lives.
No, that was lovely. I love that video. That's such a lovely thing to have, to not just promote the teams, but actually illustrate the strength of feeling. It's so lovely. We did have one question from Marie, who says, the teams do not appear diverse. Does the team represent the community? I suspect I know the answer to this.
So looking at for BAME populations, is that what the suggestion is? Yes, and I understand that. Worcestershire doesn't have a very high population. We have about 7% of our population, and I do appreciate that that is not represented in the video, and we are working with our communities to make it more representative, absolutely. This video, when it was done 2 years ago, represented the groups of which we were looking for, and again, we're looking at a lot of the vulnerabilities that we have within Worcestershire, and whilst it may not necessarily be a high BAME population, we do have teams that are working with those populations. We do have lots of transient populations who work within the fruit picking and farming industries, and various other populations that are also vulnerable in a different way. I completely and utterly appreciate, and of course that will be the Worcestershire focus, plus those populations that we have for BAME. So yes, very good question, Marie, and it is appreciated and acknowledged.
Thank you. And we've had a comment from Cecile Davidson, who says, your video was shown to first year student midwives in Bordeaux this year. to learn about continuity of care. Excellent.
I'm going to have to get a new
Excellent
video now.
materials.
That's it. Thank you,
A big
Cecile.
thing. I suppose the only query I had, and I think you were talking about the self-managed, which I think is the key,
Yes.
because I think the autonomy is such an important part of it. But what do you do if you have in a team maybe one person who isn't quite pulling their weight and it's falling on everybody else to maybe take a few more difficult shifts on, etc.?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Midwives are human.
Absolutely, and that is a question that does come up quite a bit when developing teams and when talking to other areas. How is it managed? You know, and as much as someone who overworks, who potentially underworks, and so the teams are self-managing in that sense, and we have coaching set up for them, so that hopefully if those types of issues start to be addressed or are seeming to come out, that the teams can come together and talk about it before this becomes an issue. And that's part of the Bootsword model that we have adopted, is this under layer, so to speak, of that team support, because part of being autonomous is also being accountable, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
you know, if you overwork or underwork yourself, something has to happen in the middle, doesn't it? And of course it is helping everybody adjust to all of that. And the important part of continuity is to also appreciate that it isn't a community model where you do community work all day long and then are on call for intrapartum care at night time or available at night time. And it isn't a labour ward model where you do a bit of community work in between shifts on a labour ward. It's a very different model. It's, you essentially flip it on its head and you're given a set number of women to look after, which means you manage the number of bookings that you've got, making sure you don't overload yourself or your teams in any particular month. Annual leave, and you actually look after those women. And so that is designed throughout the system, is flipping everything on its head to actually say, this is a set number of women. Whilst of course we're going to watch your hours, actually here is what the deliverables would be. And it's not without its challenges, and that is certainly true. And it is hard when you have had set ways of working for such a long time to come out of that and to learn to do something completely and utterly different. And we as the NHS, and I'm speaking we in the broad sense of the entire NHS, need to be flexible and adapting to this way of care, and to actually embrace the fact that staff may not be present at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but may in fact be present at 2 o'clock in the morning, and allowing them to manage those ebbs and flows as they are.
Fabulous. That's a perfect answer.
Thank
you so much, Caitlin. That's fabulous, because I think it's so lovely, having lived through the first sort of ebb of continuity in the sort of, you know, a few years back now. It's so lovely to see that it's really gaining impetus and really going and being done in the way you don't have a continuity model that's just dipped in when the labour ward's a bit short, people are pulled out and then put in the labour ward, because that is always a bit of a death knell for continuity teams. So that's fabulous. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.